My name is Peter. I'm a fan of the X-Men. I've read a lot of X-Men comics. I'm here with Mike, who is a crazy fan of X-Men and has read more issues than is probably healthy.
You might say that more than one issue is probably more than is healthy with some of these.
That is very true. We are jumping right into... We're skipping the first decade or so of X-Men and jumping right into the Chris Claremont, John Byrne era. Mike, can you tell us why that is?
So, the John Byrne era is when a lot of the plots that become important in X-Men for the next 50 years, probably more than that, start showing up. It's only like about 3 to 4 years worth of comics, but there's like dozens of characters that still exist in the comics from that period. Oh, yeah.
You have Kitty Pryde, Emma Frost, Sebastian Shaw, the entire Hellfire Club.
And the entire Alpha Flight also.
Yep. Yeah, and I think that's one of the most notable things, is this is where Wolverine goes from being a background character with a weird costume to being Wolverine.
Right, so the first comic of the Byrne run, I pointed this out to you earlier, has all of the X-Men on the cover with the exception of Wolverine. At this point, Chris Claremont and Dave Cockrum, who had been doing X-Men since the relaunch, weren't sure what to do with Wolverine and were thinking of kind of moving him out because he was not very interesting to them. In fact, Dave Cockrum wanted to have Wolverine be a mutated Wolverine as opposed to a mutated human.
I have heard that one before. So this is kind of like what's commonly agreed is the branch point from the complete madness of the Silver Age to the complete madness of the Bronze Age.
It's a very different madness. And yeah, Cockrum's run on it was still very Silver Agey in feel. A lot of like planet juggling type things going on.
I know I was disappointed because this is 2 or 3 issues after the Leprechauns in Sean Cassidy's castle reveal that Wolverine's first name is Logan, because
that would be in X-Men 103. Yeah.
Because Logan is tight with the Leprechauns.
It's also revealed in that issue that Nightcrawler is invisible when he's in the shadows, a fact that never comes up ever again.
It never... Okay.
Not to my knowledge. I mean, when we're reading through, maybe we'll encounter it. But it was made a very big deal of during that plot line.
Yeah.
And then just... that was it.
Yeah, Mike actually just... The other reason we're doing this is Mike just finished up his complete run of the Byrne stuff, which is awesome. I'm going to be reading this through the scans on Marvel Unlimited, but the actual physical comics are great and have it like a whole different level of madness in them. Mike was showing me the letter that John Byrne wrote into this, his introduction letter.
Yeah, I'll get that out right now.
Yep.
So, I like to make my apologies in advance. Taking over a book from another artist is bad enough. Oftentimes one style differs from the other, and readers are subjected to a quantum lurch. But taking over a book from an artist one has admired for years, I might even go so far as to say an artist of whom I have myself been a fan, puts the newcomer through almost as bad a lurch as the readers, sometimes worse. Taking over the X-Men has put me through changes. Oh boy, has it put me through changes. Not enough that I have to follow in Dave Cockrum's footsteps, but the role of artists on this book reads like a who's who of comics. Kirby, Smith, Steranko, Adams, and now Byrne? Byrne? Who is this guy? What's he done besides the late lamented Kung Fu book? Okay, he co-created a very popular little robot a few years back, but no one is handing out laurels for past glories. Sigh. So bear with me, folks. Give the new kid a chance. Marvel trusts me. After all, they've let me play with Spider-Man and the Avengers and Daredevil, now the X-Men. Bear with me. We may all come through this alive. I also want to point out on the very last page of this issue, John Byrne writes, "This book dedicated with respect and admiration to Dave Cockrum, who helped make the dream a reality," which Dave Cockrum then responds, "I'm not dead."
I love that. And for those of you not to spoil things from 30 or 40 years ago, that is not a level of modesty we will see in John Byrne very, very often.
Yeah, in fact, like, it's one of those situations where you had two people who were both artistically challenging each other to make things better and made one of the most amazing runs of comics, but was always going to eventually come to an ego slugfest that someone was going to lose.
Yep. And that, and who, I mean, and that's the question, right? I mean, Claremont would go on for, many more years to write the X-Men.
About 150 issues after that, yep.
Yep. And Byrne would go on to have some of the most popular runs of the Fantastic Four. He would reinvent Superman in the post-crisis era. But none of them, their stuff always kind of lacked the, I'm challenging you to be better.
It's like 1970s Fleetwood Mac, but with less sex.
We don't know that. No, we will get to it eventually. My all-time favorite picture moment in all of this is Byrne freaking loved Colossus, and so there is a page where Claremont has the script written. Colossus tries with all of his might, to rip a tree out of the ground, and Byrne just shows him like shoulder pressing it, and then Claremont's caption is, "It's taking all my might to do this."
All right. So, as the story goes, in the first part of the X-Men run that they had together, Roger Stern was the editor for a lot of it, and Roger Stern was friends with John Byrne from the Charlton days. John Byrne did art for Charlton before Marvel. In fact, Chris Claremont convinced Marvel to hire him to do Iron Fist with him for a brief period of time. Yeah. So Roger Stern was friends with Byrne, and when there were conflicts between Byrne and Claremont, he would always kind of come down on the Byrne side of it. And then later, Louise Simonson became the editor who liked Claremont better, and John Byrne couldn't handle that.
Yeah, I heard, what was it? She was supposed to come in after the Phoenix Saga, but she ended up being slotted in during the last issue or two of the Phoenix Saga, just because she needed to be the referee for Byrne and Claremont's egos. Okay, so without much more ado, let's get to the actual issue. So Mike was showing me right before we started, we were looking at X-Men 107, and he was pointing out the big difference here is everyone gets a lot prettier the second Byrne takes over this book.
I mean, I love Cockrum's art, and I think he does amazing things with panel layouts that no other artist really can compare with. Well, I mean Steranko, but
well, Steranko's different. Yeah.
But John Byrne puts so much detail on the characters' faces that they look better. They're much more attractive, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, so we're looking at that first cover. The upper corner panel has Banshee, Colossus, Storm, Wolverine, Nightcrawler, and Cyclops. And like Mike was saying, the cover features the five of the six on the cover, but they've left Wolverine off, which is probably one of the last times Wolverine wasn't on an X-Men cover.
I think honestly, Wolverine doesn't start Wolverining in Essence until 133 in Dark Phoenix.
Oh yeah.
But the issue right after this, 109, we have Wolverine being front and center and the most important person on the cover because he's getting punched. Because he's
Canadian, and so is John Byrne.
Yes, John Byrne definitely wanted to do things with the Canadian character.
Yep. And actually, that's one of the fun pieces of trivia that I know is he was the one who insisted that Wolverine get the brown and yellow costume, because he was like, that's not, Wolverines don't wear yellow and blue. That's a Michigan Wolverine. He's a Canadian Wolverine.
And also, in this issue, Wolverine theoretically strips the uniform off of Fang of the Imperial Guard,
Not the Legion of Superheroes.
Not the Legion of Superheroes. And where's that? And John Byrne has said that he did not like drawing that uniform at all because there's way too much going on it. Mm-hmm. And fair enough. There's like teeth and...
Yeah, he has like necklaces of teeth around his shoulders, his wrists, his waist, and I believe his ankles.
Yeah, it's just a lot of teeth.
Yeah. And so was it did the Starjammers appear for the first time last issue?
They appeared in full for the first time last issue. I think in 105 we get a panel of Corsair and Chad talking, but no indication of how important they're eventually going to be. Mm-hmm. But 107, interestingly enough, so everybody knew that Dave Cockrum was leaving the title because they wanted to make it monthly, and Dave Cockrum had so much going on that he could not do a monthly title. Mm-hmm. So they were moving it to Byrne. So in X-Men 107, Chris Claremont actually took Cockrum aside and said, like, man, do you really want to introduce 30 new characters mm-hmm. in this issue because you're not going to have any say in how they get developed? And Cockrum was like, yeah, sure, whatever. I don't care. So he basically left John Byrne with the X-Men on an alien planet with a universe-destroying weapon and an intergalactic civil war and fighting the Legion of Imperial Guard and the Starjammers appearing out of nowhere in order to help them out. And now John Byrne gets to fix it.
Yep. For those of you guys who are new to all this and don't know you who will doubt our nerd cred, this is us. So yeah, the issue opens like Mike was saying. There's just the not Legion of Superheroes are all laid out. The X-Men of the Starjammers are noticing the Mcron crystal, which will have a whole bunch of jobs in the years to come, including rebooting reality for the Age of Apocalypse.
Crown Crystal does a lot of heavy lifting. It's one of the biggest Deus Ex Machinas in Marvel. Mm-hmm. Right up there with the Phoenix Force, which in here we get the combination of two classic Deus Ex Machinas together. It's like chocolate and peanut butter.
It tastes great. Actually, they do go along pretty well together. So then we have a recap of we have a little recap of 107 because, as Stanley will tell you, every comic is somebody's first. And then we have this is my personal favorite page of the comic.
This is one of my personal favorite pages of any comic.
Yeah. So one of Chris. Okay, so there's a couple of things going on here. You have Peter Corbeau, who has perhaps the most jobs in the Marvel universe. He
also enjoys deep sea fishing.
Yes, and he has a number of hobbies that he excels at.
He built a satellite that orbits the sun closely enough that when there were solar flares, it threatened to take it out. Mm-hmm. But before there were solar flares, it was fine.
And I think by this point he had already technically become an Avenger.
I'm not as big on Avenger trivia, so I can't confirm that, but it seems believable.
Yep. So this issue, you also have. So recently, Marvel has really comics in general have gone away from like nailing down a specific president when they have a president on screen. They do a lot of shadows, they do a lot of generic accents. But this is actually the one point in the issue where Claremont will do a Claremont accent to give Gerald Ford a very
Jimmy Carter.
Jimmy Carter, yes, a very southern accent. And we have Peter, who's advising Reed Richards, T'Challa,
Hank Pym, Beast, all of whom are holders of doctorates. Yep. And Carter's head science advisor is also on this call. And Pierre Corbeau basically tells them all to shut up because he's smarter.
I kind of love it.
I like that, like, none of them really question it.
No. Oh, and Hank, and then they're just like, and then Hank Pym is just, hold me, Janet. This man is too correct about this, which is probably the best Hank, which probably the best Hank Pym I've ever seen written.
I liked John Byrne's Avengers stuff. I think that he treated Pym pretty well, honestly. And then now we go back to our heroes, and we have a very small, gangly-looking, possibly wizard alien saying that he is guarding the gate, and that they have to get through him to get to it. And the X-Men are like, how tough can this be? And the answer is, this dude is like Proto-Yoda. He flips Wolverine into orbit.
Actually into orbit. The Starjammer ship confirms that there is a small organic humanoid form, 1.6 meters long and 70 kilos.
And let me just point out that even in space, they use the metric system. Everybody like flipping Colossus around, and like
he's probably 2 or 3 feet tall.
Yep.
Just has Nightcrawler by the tail. He's punching Raza, the Shakespearean cyborg duelist he's just great on every level.
I think that I'm more of a fan of Hepzibah than I am of Raza, but I'll accept Raza as a great Starjammer.
And so he's throwing around Colossus, and then
implies that he can send Colossus into orbit as well.
Yeah.
But thankfully, Chad catches him, and it does look from the trajectory that he would probably hit orbit if Chad was not there.
It is like a straight, like almost like a 45 degree or better angle. Yeah. And then you have Jean Grey decide to settle this in the subtle manner that only the Phoenix can do, which is to drop a wandering meteorite onto our little purple Proto Yoda.
But Proto Yoda doesn't care. He can get a meteorite dropped on him.
Yep. The next panel is him effectively just brushing the dirt off his shoulders.
He no-sells getting a meteorite dropped on him. But then he falls to the power of Banshee's sonic scream.
Listen, I'm just going to point this out once because we're going to be doing this for a while. All screams are inherently sonic. That's how sound works.
Right, but you gotta get that alliteration into the comics.
That's true. And this is actually Sean has yet to acquire his almost unintelligible Irish accent at this point.
He actually had it for a little bit during the. I don't know why Claremont changed the dialect a little bit. Like, Banshee was already somewhat indecipherable before this, and then he became decipherable to later become indecipherable, and you would think that the artist change wouldn't matter on that, but somehow it does.
It's all a power play on Sean's part. He could speak. He could speak clearly.
He's only going to do it for John Byrne.
Yeah.
No, nobody else.
Mm-hmm. It's a power move on his part, and yeah, he just holds Joff close. It yells really loud at him, and not Colossus punching him, not Phoenix dropping an asteroid on him,
not Storm using vague weather powers on him, or Cyclops optic blast. It's just screaming at him. Although Banshee is definitely feeling it after that screaming episode.
Throats never felt so raw. I can barely talk.
And yet then we have like a 5-paragraph speech bubble in the very next panel from it.
Full monologue.
So now we get a second Guardian, which is a giant robot who is 1,000 times more powerful than Joff. And if you defeat him, it'll be 1,000 times more, and 1,000 times more, and 1,000 times more, which makes you wonder, why are you starting off with a low power level if you could just like throw the 10 billion times power guy out to start with?
Because the predecessors of the Shi'ar Empire had a sense for drama, which is the only answer I can think of. So we have a bit more fight. We have some strategizing.
And then Phoenix just says, "Forget you guys. I'm just going to go around and go into the gem."
Yeah.
Like, why are we fighting Guardians when we could just skip to the end?
Yeah. We're not here for the boss fight. We're here for the thing the boss is hiding, and we can see the thing the boss is hiding directly behind him. And this is why she's the smartest one. And then you actually get this is one of the things Claremont does, or Byrne does very well. This empty alien city.
Although I do want to say, and in one of the pages that we share, you'll see us again. Here you have a black background with colored letters on it, and it looks great on your Marvel.com rip of it, but in the actual comic, you can barely read it because of the newsprint at the time.
That is roughly the same color as the newsprint, yes.
So,
So when we're doing this, Mike has kindly brought his copy, and I'm looking at the Marvel Unlimited scans, which pop a lot more. And then you just have like this gore, and then you just have like two gorgeous shots of Jean, where it's just she's just looking awesome. Much better than in Chakrams. Before she had actually like she had a jaw that jutted off at 90 degrees. And this is just amazing art.
Yeah, I mean, Cockrum, again, he did a lot of things really great. But faces were not one of them. And you don't even really notice it until you see Byrne doing the same people's faces. Yeah,
Byrne, one of Byrne's definitely his strengths as an artist is, he definitely does, he doesn't just have a generic superhero face. You can tell, okay, this is this character, even though there's two guys or two gals next to each other, they don't share the same face. So many times in comics.
There was the old joke that would have the same panel and label it Steve Rogers, Henry Pym, Johnny Storm. They all essentially looked exactly the same.
Exactly, yeah. And these, they definitely get personality. They definitely get personalities and faces. They're a lot more dynamic.
And he's also really good at showing emotion through the facial features as well.
Oh yeah, that is the thing. Well, that's exactly what I was trying to say about Jean's face. She just looks shot. So she's going over to the sphere of power, and you just see the bewilderment on her face. This is like I'm used to fighting Magneto. I am completely out of my element here. And she is being seduced by the beauty of alien power, which is a problem that Jean will go on to have.
Well, several times, yeah.
Yeah.
This is not the first time she had that problem, actually.
No?
That's how she became Phoenix in the first place.
True.
Yeah.
And then the fail-safe for the sphere itself, after the two Guardians and presumably the 1,000 more that would have come, is just psychic trauma. We have the Mad Emperor remembering his the eldritch monstrosity that apparently was his childhood pets.
Yeah. We'll just go on from that. Then we have like malformed versions of the X-Men beating up Nightcrawler, and we're going back to again. Corsair of the Starjammers is Cyclops' father. And at this point, Jean knows it, and later in this issue, Storm knows it, but will be years before anybody thinks to inform Scott himself of it.
Mike, if you ever learn of my mysterious father is actually a space pirate, please let me know.
Oh, of course. And I don't think they even handle on panel telling Alex, Scott's brother, about it. I think he just finds out about it off panel.
This is one of the things I love about X-Men comics is at various points, Cyclops will be teaming up with his father, with his hypothetical alternate universe daughter, and his son, and not know that any of them are related to him at that time. He'll find out later. And his teammates will actively keep the secret from him.
I wonder if they just think it's funny to a degree.
I could see that. You know, Wolverine would do that.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And Nightcrawler might mean it like in a good natured way, and Storm would keep it in her back pocket as some kind of weapon.
And Colossus is just going to go along with the crowd, you know. I mean, at this point, he wants to fit in and does not have as distinctive of a personality as he will later have. Although Wolverine keeps calling him Petey Pureheart during this point because he thinks he's too good.
I mean, if Wolverine thinks you're too noble of a person, you're probably just doing something right in your life.
Probably. And we have Jean flashes to her nightmare of dying on the space shuttle, which she's like, oh, well, I got better from death, so I don't even care.
Yeah. Jean Grey, as we will find out if this podcast goes on long enough, Jean Grey is just trauma that walks like a woman.
I mean, and she has a habit of dying a lot.
True.
Nobody dies like Jean Grey. Like it's just.
I think the on-panel count back when Grant Morrison took over X-Men 20 years ago. Grant said that they had read everything, and that Jean had died 20 times on camera.
That seems right. My favorite is in the first issue, not written by Claremont, when they split into Blue Team, Gold Team. Jean Grey dies in the first issue, not written by Claremont.
And I believe that was written by Byrne, wasn't it? Or he would take over immediately, or he would take over very, very soon after that.
I'm not sure. We could research that.
Okay, we will cut this little section out, and we will find out, and then put the right answer in. 1 second. So the next few pages are Jean just going completely mad with power.
Yeah, this is a recurring theme.
We will see this a few times. We will see this several times before she officially goes Dark Phoenix, which is her using the Phoenix Force more and more, and each time going, "I am life and beautiful, and I have never felt more alive than I have at this moment."
And she also tends to have less and less humanity with it going forward. We'll get to it eventually, but she does at one point disassemble a speeding car, letting the driver and the passenger of the car just continue at that speed and reassemble a car behind them.
Yeah, she does start using her powers more and more for more and more powerful for more and more trivial things. And it's actually a nice slow burn over the next 40 issues or so.
Yeah, it goes from 108 to 143, so
35. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you just get these glorious shots of and how it's even affecting Earth. We cut to Misty Knight and Professor Xavier
and Jean Grey's parents. This is in the previous issue. They're attacked while visiting Jean Grey's new apartment that her and Misty Knight share, and the Greys are there as a housewarming and. They're talking about how much they love this apartment, and then Firelord destroys it.
Firelord, he's kind of a jerk.
Yep. And, well, we'll get to that in a minute. So now she needs to kumbaya with the X-Men and Starjammers in order to control and humanize herself.
And to remember her place in the world, she reaches out to Storm. And she reaches out to Corsair, and she's just like, oh yeah, by the way, I totally know who you are. I'm gonna name drop you, and yeah, just help me out here.
And also, I want to point out in here, Storm willingly giving up her life if necessary in order to save the world, which is something that happens quite a bit as well.
Yes,
but the world never quite takes her up on it.
Jean Grey dies a lot. Storm, I don't believe Storm has died, at least
248 when it was a LMD, life model decoy. Nanny and the Orphan Maker turned Storm into a baby. Yep. That's the only Storm death I can think of, and even that was within the issue shown that she didn't actually die.
And then we just get we get a few more gorgeous pages by Byrne. Just, how, the negative galaxy that they are in is powerful, but, Jean as the Phoenix is more powerful.
And just, like, Byrne's art of the Phoenix Force is beautiful. Mm-hmm. I always like that.
Yeah, at one point the raptor wings are larger, so large they dwarf the entire star system. Chris Claremont can write like no one's business. The man uses metaphors, chef's kiss for how that man uses metaphors and allegories, similes. He's just an amazing writer. We haven't quite reached the point of the angry Claremont narrator who can almost interact with the characters in the comic yet, but we'll get there.
So now the X-Men get sent back to Earth. Wolverine definitely feeling it from being shoved into orbit by Proto-Yoda.
Yep. Yeah, that's actually one thing I want to go over. I know now we have Wolverine who can regenerate from a single drop of blood. But back in the day, the man would heal faster than you or I would.
Right, and also an injury that may kill us, such as having been thrown into orbit, would not necessarily kill him.
But he'd still be feeling it.
He'd be feeling it. If he had been left in orbit, if the Starjammers hadn't pulled him out of orbit, he would have died at this point in the comics.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then you just got Firelord. Firelord's chilling, just chilling on top of Phoenix's apartment.
And he's like, man, I'm sorry. Eric the Red lied to me, and I blew up your whole building for no reason. See you later. Bye.
But and also what I love is just, the X-Men see Firelord. They're like, Cyclops says, okay, guys, let's get ready to attack. And Jean is just, you know what? No, I need a nap. If he's going to kill me, he's going to kill me. I will be in my bed.
Dude, I just saved the universe, and you want to fight a Herald of Galactus? Go for it, dude.
And then Lilandra.
She comes back to Earth because the Galactic Civil War in the Shi'ar Empire left her both the most wanted person in the Empire and also the Empress. Yes. So she's like, I'm going to hide here while everybody sorts out what's going on back home. Mm-hmm. And her and Xavier are going to be,
They're going to be smooching.
Yep.
I think the Lilandra Charles Xavier relationship is a oddly long-standing relationship.
Really is, especially as we get into later issues. At this point, we already know that him and Moira McTaggart had a thing. Mm-hmm. We'll later find out about Gabrielle Haller and Amelia Voigt and a whole bunch of other people that Xavier had a thing with, but the only one that really sticks around is Lilandra.
Yep. At some point in the future, she will get him armor that has just just gives him the greatest six-pack in all comics. And
because Jim Lee drew it.
that would explain that. And then we get to John Burns, in memorial for Dave Cockrum, who is once again not dead.
Well, I mean, now he is, but at the time this issue came out, he was not.
And that is that. So that is. I was talking to Mike earlier before we started this. This is a comic that This is a comic that if it came out today or 5 years ago, this would have been a six issue story arc. And
at least, yeah.
And they just crack it out in one issue.
I think a lot of that is because Byrne wanted to wrap up the story arc that Cockrum had been working on, because like he says in his letter, it's hard to come in after somebody, and it's hard to come in and try to continue that particular story. So he tries to tie up all loose ends, but since Claremont's writing it, that doesn't happen ever.
No, Chris Claremont stopped writing the X-Men in 1991 or so, and we are still and 35 years later, we are still working on those plot lines.
Yep. I mean, he would just dangle them up there, and it was a intentional strategy to get you to keep reading it, because, I mean, in this issue, we have, Corsair is Cyclops' father. Will Cyclops find out? Are we going to keep it a secret? How is he going to find out? It makes us intrigued for what is going to happen eventually.
And on that note, I will drop. He finds out while he's shaving.
Oh, that's right.
Yes. At some point, Cyclops will grow a majestic beard, and while shaving it, he leaves the handlebar mustache on, and he's like, I look a lot like Corsair. And I'm not going to mention this to my brother. Any of my brothers.
Poor Alex Summers. He's the middle child of history in a lot of ways. I like Havoc quite a bit. He's one of my favorite characters. But he is always the guy that they bring in, and they're like, oh, we're going to use him for something. And they're like, I don't know about all this. And they jettison him off with everything unresolved. Cyclops has some earth-shattering news about his family and forgets he has a brother.
And not only is he the middle child of history, he's also the middle child of the Summers family.
That's accurate as well.
We will get to that in 7 or 8 years if this podcast goes long enough.
Oh, man. And we'll find out, hopefully, who the youngest Summers child is, because there's a lot of options out there.
Actually, canonically, that is who you think it is. But we'd like to thank everyone for listening to this first episode. You have, in fact,
survived the experience, yes.
And next time on our podcast, the first appearance of Alpha Flight, because John Byrne is Canadian.
Well, the first appearance of the leader of Alpha Flight. Alpha Flight shows up about 10 issues later.
Ah, okay.
But I mean, it's fair enough to say Alpha Flight.
We hope you join us again next time. Please comment, subscribe, and all those other wonderful YouTube things.
And survive as well.
Survive, yes. We do need you to survive. We need an audience.
Thank you.